with mir verweisen. So choice. What's up, everybody? Today's rabbit hole video is going to be on a few things. The first thing I want to talk about, since I'm releasing a few Battlefield videos, is basically what made Battlefield so great. I've had a few different comments come up asking literally why is it a good game, and a few questions that comments that are just so lack of understanding of the game, so I thought I'd talk about it, not to mention my favorite game of all time. And then I wanted to relate some of those points back to present day games. So to start off with, Battlefield, what makes Battlefield so great? I'll try to sum this up. I have a lot of other rabbit hole videos where I've talked about different elements. To start off with, it was a conquest style gameplay, first person shooter. What this means is that it's not capture the flag and it's not team deathmatch. There are different points around the map. It's like domination. But with good maps. Where you capture them and you hold them. What this does is that along with good map design, this takes away so many of these nasty fucking elements from shooters that encourage people to camp. It gives incentive to move around, and what happens is you have people constantly running around and you don't end up with the nasty bullshit that you find in COD. A lot of that goes into level design as well, where I spoke about my recent video where when you have these smaller maps that are more closed in and they're made for, well, they're basically console friendly, and you have all these things you can head glitch over. Anyway, creates all these other problems. When you have these bigger open maps and there's an infinite way to approach any given objective or scenario, you end up with these very creative solutions. You end up with players that are significantly better than other players because of things like their map awareness and their ability to basically outsmart other players. I've always thought that you don't need good aim, because if you're outsmarting someone else, you're shooting them in the back and don't need good aim to do that. The second thing that made it great was basically the vehicles. These vehicles added this new element, these new layers of depth that no game had had before that. It was very, very ambitious at the time. It still is the best representation of any game that has been done with vehicles to this date. Everything was so well balanced. You know, years down the road, people ended up figuring out what worked and what didn't, and ultimately the game died for a number of reasons, one of them being balance issues weren't addressed. But for the first 3-4 years, or 5 years, whatever it was, I mean, the game was just brilliant. So vehicles were incredible. It balanced out the team versus individual aspects of the game, which I think is huge. So you have games like, say, Team Fortress, right, which are very, very team-oriented. Games like Left 4 Dead, they're a lot of fun. Even games like World of Warcraft, they're a lot of fun, but typically if the rest of the people on your team are not performing alongside you or adequately, there's really not a lot you can do as an individual, and this was not the case in Battlefield. Battlefield was a game where, unless you were getting your teeth just brutally kicked the fuck in, there was a lot you could do as an individual, despite the fact that your team may have not been doing so well. When you go into the competitive scene, teams that were excellent with teamwork and coordination and whatnot did excel and beat those that had superior individual talent, but and I don't think that that's necessarily a problem with the game. That was something that was at the highest possible competitive level. It was a lot of fun trying to achieve those levels. Let's see, map awareness in the form of not having any radar. So there is a radar. It's huge, way too big in my opinion. You can see your own teammates, but you can't see any of the enemies. So what this means is that you have to have map awareness. You have to be aware of your surroundings. You have to know what's going on. You have to rely on not only sight but sound as well. Audio whoring. This is one of the first games to really bring in the whole concept of audio whoring. Hearing those approaching tanks, hearing people firing guns off, picking out the different sounds in the different guns, and knowing that this gun is what the other team starts off with, etc. Hearing those tanks approaching the distance, incredible. So much fun, so much fun. The last element that made this game so great, as someone who loves first-person shooters specifically, got something in my eye here, is the balance between the different guns, the hit detection, the fantastic, I want to say, lag compensation or lack thereof. It was so smooth, it was so perfect. Where you aimed is where you shot. Because guns didn't shoot overly fast and didn't kill very fast, that is relative to COD. And they didn't have a whole lot of bullets in the clips themselves. What that meant was that players that had the best map awareness, players that had the best strafing, players that had the best aiming were the guys that came out on top. And they didn't just come out on top by a small margin, they came out on top by massive, huge margins. The difference is, this is so great, this is how it relates back to the present day games, is that Battlefield had a patch that came out that we all suspected, because of Punkbuster, it may have been incorrect by the way, that we all suspected because of Punkbuster ruined what we term as the hit detection. When someone is running perpendicular to you, when they are running basically this way, you're standing here trying to shoot them, it is almost impossible to shoot them right now. Some of these videos that we're showing, both myself and Bruce, that you're seeing these crazy kill clips, are because people are basically so bad and so stupid. And so they sit around and we're able to compensate for having this complete inability to hit anything. If myself or Bruce were to play each other, it would be emptying clips into the air and nothing would be happening. Nobody would be shooting anybody. But because nobody is strafing and people basically just stand still, you're able to create clips where you get these, you know, silly KDs and you look like God because people are just so silly, not because of superior skills. Before this patch came out, and that patch was ultimately, in my opinion, the majority of what ended up killing the game. Before this patch came out, it had such a great feeling to it. You had all these different elements coming together, this map awareness, these big maps with, you know, anywhere, you know, a million different possibilities to approach them. You had conquest style gameplay, you had vehicles, you had the team play elements, you had this individual focus. And on top of that, you had this awesome hit detection. There was no lag involved. It was so wonderful. It felt so smooth and so good. What it meant was every time you approached any given scenario, whether it was in tanks, whether it was in planes, whether it was infantry, if you died, chances are, for the most part, you deserve to die. Obviously, there's things that happen that are out of your control from time to time, but those are not the majority in the game. They are the anomaly. You know, there was no unavoidable kill streaks, there was no head glitching, there was no being spawned on. It was so satisfying because the cream rise to the top every time. It was a wonderful, wonderful game to play for many years. It was my absolute favorite. It absolutely dominated the competitive scene for many, many, many years. Thousands and thousands of people played this and lusted over the top positions in Cal. Some of my best memories in gaming. And the idea of coming back to a game that is similar to that not is necessarily like Battlefield and, you know, the vehicles and things like that, but an FPS combat that brings in proper hit detection, latency, you know, the guns aren't firing so fast that everybody dies so quickly. And once again, to relate it back to how present day games, the most played, most popular mod in Battlefield 1942 was a mod called Desert Combat. And if you can already, anybody who's watched some of these videos can already guess where I'm going with this. The reason why Desert Combat mod was so popular is because it did several things. It amped up the damage and speed of many vehicles and of the guns themselves. What that meant was that it put the average Joe on a higher level and a more even pedestal with competing against somebody like myself or Bruce or anybody else who was on a top tier team. When guns fire that much faster and do more and more damage, it means that there is a greater and greater chance of aiming and strafing playing less and less of a, being less and less of an impact, you know, having less and less of an impact on any given encounter. So that was the most popular way to play it because nobody likes getting pooped on constantly, right? So we don't have matchmaking, we just have servers. That was the most popular way to play the game. The second most popular way to play the game, and the way that the game is still played, is having these monstrous servers. 64 player servers, 32v32. The maps simply are not set up for these. There's not enough vehicles, and not only not enough vehicles, but you just don't have enough rounds in a friggin' clip to be able to potentially win an 8v1 encounter. It's just this massive Zerg fest. There is zero to no skill that is involved. Everybody's KDs just drop dramatically. They go from, you know, the top players being 10 or 15 to 1 down to everybody is like a 3, maybe 4 to 1 because it's just a complete clusterfuck. Once again, one of the reasons why that is popular is because it's one of the ways to bring that skill ceiling down so that everybody's on a similar level. James Bond back in the day, the most popular way to play that game you know, amongst my friends, everybody loved to play, what was it, either Golden Gun or License to Kill, because when you have one bullet that kills everything, everybody has that much of a better chance of being the best player. This is the exact same reason why COD is the game that it is today. It gives every single person the potential of being the single best player for that round. It's why some of the best players on YouTube can put up videos of them having 30, 40, whatever, 50 kill streaks, and the very next round they're having difficulty breaking even. Consistency, it's all about consistency. A bad round in Battlefield might consist of a 3, 4, 5 to 1 KD, and that would be a bad round. A good round would be a 10 to 1, a great round might be a 20 to 1. It all depends on what you're doing. Many of those consistency factors were lost after that patch came out, where it was no longer possible to consistently hit somebody that was essentially running perpendicular to you. Less of an issue if you're using vehicles. The majority of an issue is infantry on infantry combat. Whew! So intense about this stuff. I loved this game. It was so great. And the games that are out today, essentially the COD of FPS gaming, took what made Battlefield, took what a great player did in Battlefield to become a great player, and did the exact opposite of that. Added radar in, added small maps, restricted your movement, added in guns that shoot extremely fast and do very lethal damage. In addition to all that, they added in kill streaks, barrels that are the perfect height to head glitch over, and you have a game that virtually is indistinguishable from the FPSs that I came to love years and years ago. But like I said, the whole trend of trying to normalize skill ceilings so that everybody can compete with everyone else is something that's been going on for a long time, even when on Battlefield. But video games are the only area in our lives where we actually do this. You don't see it happening in the NBA, you don't see it happening in the Olympics. You know, it'd be really great. I'm sure that I could have a lot better chance of competing with Kobe Bryant if we started playing 40v40 basketball on the same floor and we lowered the hoops to 6 feet. I'll bet that Kobe Bryant wouldn't look nearly as good if we put that many people in and lowered the hoops. But that's not how we do it in basketball. We say if you're not good enough, then tough shit, you play college ball and then you don't go to the pros. But the way we do it in video games is we say if you're not good enough, go play fucking COD. Fucking sucks. Anyway, as always, comments, criticisms, critiques.